Have you ever showed up for a gig, plugged in that USB, and everything went wrong? It's happened to me way too many times. Today we're gonna go over step by step how to prep your set in Rekordbox, and if you're using Pioneer equipment, I'll show you how we can load our custom settings onto the USB, so as soon as you plug it in, everything is loaded just the way you want it. Whether you're preparing for a big gig or just DJing as a hobby, here are the best settings to follow. Let's talk about it. My name is Burke. I'm a DJ and producer based out in Brooklyn, New York City. I played many shows in this area, and after a bunch of trial and error, I can guarantee you these are the best settings in order to make sure your night goes as smooth as possible. Okay, so step one is about organizing your music library. I download my music from Beatport. I like to get the best quality version of the track, the extended version so it's easier to DJ with. And then I also just like supporting the artist in general. People go ahead and download these rips from SoundCloud or YouTube converters. The quality isn't quite there, and you're running the risk that, it could be some random tag or some corrupted file when you go to transfer it to your USB. So depending on the gig that I have, I organize it here. Basically each set into one different playlist. I never really plan my sets start to finish. I usually just throw a bunch of tracks in a crate that I think I know I'm going to play and I think that would fit well. But throughout this playlist, there are a bunch of different tracks that I know I'm not going to play, but I have just in case I totally lose the crowd or what have you. So I always have these emergency tracks in different playlists. So let's take my track Drowning for example. I use hotkeys to tag up my tracks and I know exactly where I am. So I usually do it every 8 bars, but unless it's a track that I made or I know very well, then I can use less because I can just kind of tell looking at the track, this is the drop, this is the build, this is the break, this is the second build, and that's the second drop, etc. But generally I'll have a track where I'll have it pretty much every 8 bars, like this track Euphoria here. I'll mark this up with a hotkey tag every 8 bars. Just makes it easier for me because house music in general occurs in 8-bar phrases. So I go ahead and I mark up each track every 8 bars with a hotkey. So I know that when I'm playing live, I know exactly where I am in the track. Something else you're gonna wanna do is make sure that your track is aligned on the grid. Sometimes you're gonna get a track from Beatport or you'll make a track and Rekordbox, when you drag it in, won't analyze it properly. So instead of being directly on the grid like this, it may be a bit off the grid, like that. So you can tell the kick drum isn't on the grid here. But in order to fix that, we're gonna go to right on the drop. We're gonna make sure that's the kick drum. That's the drop right there. So we just align it right on the kick, or right on the source that we know is on the grid. We're gonna press this button here, set the first beat of the bar to the current position. And it'll align your beat grid. So now when you go, you'll see the grid lines that Rekordbox has set up aligns with the kick. That way you know it's on the beat grid properly. If this is not done and you go to try to mix in this track without using your ears and only using either the sync or try to visualize it on your controller without actually listening, you're gonna have a very hard time mixing that in and making it sound smooth. Some people use hotkeys only for, key parts of the track, but for me, use a hotkey. As soon as you press the button on the hotkey, either in here or on the controller, it immediately starts. Memory cues will just bring you to that spot. If we click on that, it'll bring us right to that spot in the song without actually starting it. The difference between a memory cue and a hotkey is that a hotkey, as soon as you press it, the song will start. A memory cue, if you click it, it'll bring you to that part in the song and it will not play. It'll stay paused until you press play on the CDJ itself. I prefer hotkeys, just easier for me. So after I've marked up an entire playlist, ready for the night, I'm gonna wanna export these to the USB. Here's something I learned recently that completely blew my mind. After doing this for years and years, I only just learned this about a few months ago. So you can actually create custom settings within Rekordbox that apply to your USB. So as soon as you take your USB and you plug it into the CDJ or whatever Pioneer controller that you're using at the club or you're using at home, you can actually load up the settings that you've prepared on Rekordbox in your computer. So as soon as you plug in this USB, it'll show up right there on the controller. Let me show you how. So now, in order to create settings for that USB, 3-band, I'm gonna choose RGB, I like RGB. It has the red, green, and the blue, just the way you see here. A4 position, I do like it in the center. You can also choose different sort options. You can choose the categories that are gonna be associated. So if maybe you don't usually search by album, you can remove that if you want, just so there's less things to sort through. So in this case, I'm gonna remove album. I never search by album. Who cares about album? Once these preferences are dialed in, let me show you how to get that on your USB. So we're gonna do 2 things here. We're gonna get the music onto the USB itself, then we're also gonna export our settings. So, I'll take my USB, I'm gonna plug it in. I'm gonna sync this set that I played in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. Now in order to sync this to the USB, we'll press this arrow, it'll shoot over, and then we'll press close. You'll see at the bottom here it is syncing. Once that has finished syncing, we're going to scroll down to that USB and we're going to click eject. We're good to take it out and we are good to go. Once you plug this into the Pioneer equipment, you're just going to select load settings on that screen and everything will pop up just the way you prepared it in Rekordbox. This blew my mind once I found out about it after doing this for so long and I never knew about it. I can prepare it to be exactly how I want it to look, and when I plug it in there, I can load my settings up and everything looks just like I prepared it in Rekordbox. Huge time saver, makes things less stressful. That way when I go up there and I plug in, I know exactly what I'm looking at. No surprises. If you don't have that, you can actually just plug it right back into the computer. As long as you remember what it is that you exported, we can just go into the USB and we check the playlists. We can see this is the one that I exported and all of these are on there. So this is a little tip you can use if you don't have any Pioneer equipment at home. If you do have Pioneer equipment at home, you can plug in this USB and you'll be able to test out all the tracks that are on there and make sure it's all loaded properly. If you're forgetful like me, I like to repeat this process 4 or 5 times for different USBs and I'll scatter them throughout my bags, my jackets, my pants, my headphone case. That way if anything goes wrong, you lose one of them's corrupted, you always have a backup. And a backup's backup to be able to use. Now you can walk into any club, any controller, ready to crush your set. Now in order to format a USB for the very first time, to be able to use it with Rekordbox, on Mac, we're gonna go and open Disk Utility. Select the USB that is plugged in, brand new USB. We're gonna click Erase. We're gonna name it. I'm gonna name it Burke 128 GB Extreme. The format, in order for it to work with Rekordbox, you need to select MS-DOS FAT, Master Boot Record for the scheme, and then you'll click Erase. From here, it's gonna format the USB to make sure it is ready to be used with Rekordbox. I've used a few different types of USBs in my time, but recently on Black Friday, I got the SanDisk Extreme Pro, and I could have transfer speeds of up to like 400 megabytes per second. I originally used the SanDisk Cruiser. This has never failed me. It's USB 3.0, I think transfer speeds are like 100, but this is 400. And as soon as I plug it into my XDJ or the CDJs here, like everything is loaded immediately. So, you know, it's a bit more expensive, but it's built to last. This SanDisk double-sided USB-C, USB-A, I like it, it's fast, but as soon as I plug it into my laptop, it gets incredibly hot after like 2 minutes, so I don't by any means trust plugging this into a CDJ and risking it melt inside, because then you'll owe the club $3,000. I would advise against this one. Stick with the SanDisk Extreme Pro or a SanDisk Ultra. I used for a few years, but the Cruiser, reliable. These work just as fine. This was a USB 2.0, I don't use it anymore. I'm gonna stick with the Extreme Pro for a very long time. Do not use this. Totally recommend this one. When it comes to USB and read-write speed, the faster the better. I would stay with like SanDisk or any of those other brands that are reputable. I would stay away from those no-name brands as they can get corrupted easily and they just tend to not hold up their end of the bargain when it comes to speed and reliability and durability. SanDisk has never let me down. Everyone I know uses SanDisk. All the pros use SanDisk, so you might as well just invest a little money into something that you know it's gonna last a while and something that you know works well. And that is it. If this helped, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Really appreciate it. I hope this helps. See you next week.